and welcome to this impromptu Stampscapes Live. We have a piece of the Aged Autumn stationery paper. It's lined on one side and the other side has a completely different design. That's the side that I'm going to be using here with Nature Set number 23 for the most part as far as those imagery. As far as the imagery goes, it's the covered bridge scenario. And I'll be placing that right in here with this little sloping area right down here. The stationery paper has different configurations of these floral or leaf styles of designs here. This area right down here, I'm not really quite sure what that represents, but it could just look like texture on my road. That's why I'm using this this way for this purpose right here. And plus on the covered bridge road area, we want to have kind of an opening down this way. That's why I'm not doing it this way, which would have the road kind of just going right down into these flowers elements. I don't know, I guess you could. I guess the road could be back a ways from this area right here now that I look at it. But then I would be faced with using this for some other purpose, okay? Now, if I was going to do this on with this configuration right here, with this up here on this right side, I'd probably just put in some overhanging leaves in here, or I would just cut this off and I would use a different portion of it, okay? So there's little different considerations that you think about when you're starting off with these pre-printed image papers in the background. So it's kind of fun because, I don't know, it gets you to think about your compositions a little bit more. You know, from the get-go, being that we're not starting off just with a blank piece of paper. And the same goes for color scheme too. The way that we're going to approach the coloring, the color scheme of this piece is going to be based on a lot of the tones that are already established in the paper, which is again, it's pretty fun to do. It's an interesting exercise doing that. All right, we'll stamp this right up here. You can stamp it wherever you want, but I was thinking I want to use this deer in here, so I want to have it far enough up here where I can stamp this deer to the side. At least that's the plan. I mean, plans change a lot of times in the creation of our scenes. You kind of have to let your scenes, I don't know, in some ways direct you at some point in time, because certain things might not I don't know, look like as you might have expected them to. So you gotta establish what you're going to be doing, and then, I don't know, in some ways I just let the scene kind of take over from there. Okay, so this road's coming out this way, so we have this area down here to fill in. I'm just going to be using mostly this nature set right here to establish a lot of the texturing and everything like that. There's this little grass texture. It's a small version of sedge filler. And I'll just be doing this lightly in here because we want to establish a lot of different textures and areas within this piece, and also really try to utilize the paper, because after all, that's why we're using it here. For our, I don't know, main kind of foreground imagery. Okay, coming right around in here, kind of establishing the near side of this road to extend it out this way. And then we'll extend that, it's kind of a horizon right there, I guess. I don't know, it's not really the horizon, but I don't know, the first kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? Bank up there of grass, like that. And this doesn't have to get merged in perfectly in this area, but you want to establish some texturing in there so that you have something to reference when we are going to be toning and coloring this area in. Okay, so let's see. Let me get my bearings here, and we'll see. This is going to go this way. I guess I could stamp this one right now. Might as well. Done with my baby sea turtles from the Friday Night Live. All right, now here's one of those little tricks that I always mention when doing elements. It doesn't have to be animals or something like that, but elements in kind of, yeah, supposedly a little bit of a taller grassy area. Let's see. You take a little bit of a paper towel or something or whatever, and you just wipe off the base a little bit, like the feet. Try not to take off all the ink, but you can just kind of dab it down there. And then when you stamp it out, the animal will look like it's standing in a little bit of a taller grass. I mean, it doesn't have to be super tall grass, but even if it's like 5 inches tall or something like that, you want the feet to kind of disappear within the texture of that element. All right, so go like that. Oh, Cynthia, how are you? Happy Sunday to you. I'm trying this. I hardly ever stamp squares, but I liked this element up here, and the half page went up to about right here, unless I brought this bottom portion up like that. So I thought, I've always said I need to stamp in something other than, or in addition to rectangles. So rectangles have been my life. I need to mix it up a little bit. I love it when people do post scenes where there's squares or, they're rectangles, but they're extreme rectangles when they're like bookmarks. But also sometimes when they're stamping on things like circles, and ovals, which we don't see too often because, we don't have like a convenient way to cut those out. You can just cut them out on a Cricut or something like that now. But yeah, not enough kind of, I don't know, non-rectangles for me. Whatever, traditionally. Okay, let's go with some overhanging. We have all this foliage right here, and it's supposed to be something that's really close to us. Now I'll stamp out, just to balance it out, some other foliage here off to the side, right side. Again, for balance. Okay, I already have one of these here. And I think there's some green tones and red tones in here. I think I want to go with, let's see, let me see how this pad is right here. Okay, I have a good bottle green still. A lot of my pads are, they're starting to disintegrate. I still have black and everything like that, but it is time to start replacing some of these Marvy pads, I guess. Okay, now this is going to be fall tones. It's supposed to be in here, but let me match some of the greens of these leaves here. I didn't have like this tone right here, this kind of wine color, except in like a colored pencil, so I want to bring some of that tone into the foliage, the background foliage a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so a couple different impressions in that green, but then we'll layer it with black. So there's black, kind of darker, I don't know, 90% gray tones, like right in here. 90, I don't know, maybe 95, maybe. And just try to go for a decent dark impressions with that. And it's going like about like so. Okay, and let me go with another. I'll kind of layer it here to get a little bit darker on the upper corner. And then I think we need to come in this area a little bit as well. I'm not sure with what though. Man, I don't know. Maybe I'll come in with this bushy texture again with these leaves like this. It's too open down here. And I kind of want to stay within the the imagery range of this set, you know, without using too many different images from other sets or just the individual ones. Let's go with this right down here. And I want to close this off a little bit so that it's like a nice little vignette. And then we'll leave this area open with that road, about like so. I think something like that will do. And then for a little bit more textural variation, I have this little winter twiggish type of thing. And we'll get some of these in here. I'm going to use this and mask it off. And then we'll get these little textures like that, which break up these, I don't know, repeated grass mounds in here. Like that. This area right here wouldn't be bad with that, with the fences though. I might be adding in another, some other imagery into this. All right, so see that right there? It kind of breaks everything up a little bit. The monotony of the forms within here. And then you can also use these rocks in here, actually. Go like that. I don't want to make it look too much like the road, but then we'll make a differentiation between the color from here to this dirt road right in here. Oh, you're watching on your TV? Cool, cool. Hello from your TV. All right, so we have that in here. I have this right here. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. So here's where I'm actually, excuse my head, I'm leaving space for my quote stamp and establishing that early on as opposed to it being kind of a secondary thought, or I kind of run into trouble sometimes because I didn't leave room for a lot of different like word or quote stamps in the past. So sometimes I can't use them, or I'm limited to certain quotes or words just based on the space. You know, I have enough of the variety in those scenic sentiments, but sometimes it's like, oh, that would have been really perfect with a certain quote, but there isn't the space for it, or I don't know, I didn't leave space for in a certain area of the scene. All right, so I don't know, I like popping that in there a lot of times after I've established all my colors and everything like that, because it seems like it's like the perfect kind of I don't know, finishing touch, but want to get that established in there so I can work some of the colors around that. I don't know, I don't think I'm going to be adding too much tone up there, but let's see. I do have that fence that can go in there. It wouldn't go all the way around like that, but if I can have it coming in like this, or should I just have it open like that? And let's just start adding some color in, and we'll see how it goes. I just thought I could use something with a little bit more structure right here. Even if it's just one fence, maybe it would be cool. Let me do that right now, because if I don't stamp it, now, it might not stamp really well over the top of colored pencil. Okay, let me see if I can find my fences here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Let's go ahead and do it. I was thinking about just doing one side, but I might be able to add both. Okay. This is a big open area like this that doesn't have a lot of kind of variety of form in here. It's a lot of like smaller kind of textures, so I just thought it might be good to just kind of break that up a little bit. Okay, let's see. For those that don't know, there's fences, and I have them curling off kind of into the distance from both different vantage points. So one of them curls kind of off like that, but if it was on the other side, there's the opposing side to that. Okay, and right there. I'm just going to use a small portion of it. And then I'm looking for the opposite side of the road, which is right around here. A little bit higher, or do it, let's come like that. It's usually about 55% of it or something like that. It's curling off a little bit. I could have not stamped out the end part where it's wrapping around, but I think that's fine. So again, we have a lot of activity on this side where it's heavily weighted. The imagery is heavily weighted with the inherent imagery from the stationery paper. So now I've kind of given this other side some decent visual weight, I guess. just to balance it off a little bit so that it's not, so heavily weighted like this way with all of this heavy, really close foreground foliage, okay? Hello, Deb. Clip Soul. Cool name. Yeah. Thanks for checking out the videos and subscribing. Hello, Joy. How are you? Yeah. Thanks so much for checking out the vids and subscribing. And if you're a new subscriber, I always mention this, but I do take requests. You might not know what we have, but you can say something, if you're watching some videos or something like that, and if certain things aren't clear, or if you want to know more, just ask me and I'll direct you to, I don't know, I think at this point in time there's a couple thousand videos up, but if there's something like people have like a favorite color or something like that, it's like, hey, do you have anything in like I did this what is that? Where did my mauve scene go? I don't even know where I put it just now, but if you have some kind of some kind of color scheme or something like that that you're interested in, let me know. Okay, so here's my color theory for this pre-printed paper. Okay, so this is a stationery paper right here. Warm tones for sure, but the pack, the multi-pack of this paper is called Aged Autumn. And it has these warm tones in here. I don't know if this is really so much autumn imagery. A lot of the imagery is more kind of in this pack, it's more of your maple leaf type of thing. But I like the color scheme of this right here. It's real kind of antique looking to me. But it has these tones in it, so I'm trying to grab certain colors. It doesn't have to match that color, but if it could be some sort of combination of colors that I can utilize to achieve similar tones in the rest of the piece, in the shadow areas, a lot of specifically. Here's like a green tone like this that's in this leaf right here, okay? But I'm staying within the family. I think if I just stayed with these colors right here, it might get a little bit monotonous. It'll harmonize, but I have a little bit of a warmer tone that I might use down here just to make a little bit of a different pop of color. But see, so I just get some different media that's in that same kind of color family right there. When I'm doing this type of whatever structure with an existing color palette on here, okay? So I don't really have, like I said, this is like a wine tone, and I don't know if I have that in, I might have it somewhere in I have different sets of alcohol pens, but there's some little bit of this violet down here, okay? So I've grabbed those tones down here, and I have some over here. These are acrylic paint pens. It doesn't mean I'm going to use them all, but I just kind of grabbed them as colors that I might utilize in here. But for the most part, they'll be the colors that I color and shade with in here. And I just start with that. So I start with a similar color scheme as what's going on these pre-printed papers. And, we try to, everything's just stamped out in black. So I'm going to try to utilize that color scheme as a base for additional shading, okay? This is a lighter tone than these colors on here, so I'm going to move from that one. Now, which one you start off with, it really does, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Let's try to do this. We'll try to bring in some of these tones into these, into the foliage up here. Oh, here. Actually, one thing I was thinking about too, I forgot about after I stamped that out, because I wanted to go with some additional foliage off to this side here, okay? Now it's just the top of the leaves right here, trees. So I'm going to mop off some of the ink off the left and right side and bottom here so that it kind of fades into the other imagery. Hopefully I've removed enough. Sometimes I remove some and it's like, oh, I didn't take off enough. So see, it kind of transitions where it just kind of disappears like that. And I think it kind of harmonizes with the surrounding imagery a little bit more. Especially when I'm going into this. I don't want to have this like really hard form going into this leaf right here because I want this leaf to stand out, you know, like it's in the foreground. So I'll do another one right here. This is the part that's going to go into here. You can also mask off that leaf, but I think it's just, for me, I don't know. I think this is easier this way, just to remove enough tone off of that object that's going to be behind it. And you just go like that. And it just kind of fades off right there. And this silhouette here is still nice and established. Okay, all right. Okay, but anyways, this these autumn trees back here, we'll try to get into some of these tones in here and see how that goes. I usually don't go with like a wine-colored background in here, but I don't know, it's usually oranges, yellows, and things like that. But we're starting off with these tones in here. That's why I thought this would be a good exercise here for me. Because I'm usually, I don't know, this gets me to use to try different color schemes. They used to say, they used to talk about this in like art school, but I know you'd hear it from other students mostly. But you don't want to use, you have to be careful that if you do certain things, and if they come out well, you don't want to use those over and over again as a crutch. You know, build upon it, and certainly, but don't always use that same color scheme. So this gets me to break out of the, you know, maybe some habit with certain color schemes that I've used a lot before. All right, so I'm just doing this really lightly like that, and we'll bring it up into these other types of intensities maybe. I might leave it a little bit lighter just because it looks, when you have certain color schemes like this, these are very dark and a little bit brighter, but then if you have the same kind of color scheme in the background, but it's lighter in value, it represents something that's like farther off in the distance, or it looks like something farther off in the distance. So I don't know. We'll see how it looks just as it develops here. So just keep a nice light touch if you're doing that. You know, if you're working in that, you know, a similar process. All right, so you can kind of see it coming into, you know, play back there. I'll bring some of it down here too. What I'm looking for down here now is I stamped out my sedge filler stamp, which is just a bunch of textures, and you can see those little textures right in here, okay? So instead of seeing this as a whole field, like, okay, this is all grass or something like that, I'm gonna color it in all a uniform green. What I'm doing is I'm looking for these little textural additions that I stamped out in here, and I'm just kind of enhancing them a little bit, or at the base of these little twigs. This is a big open area right here, and you just kind of go around those just very lightly. Now in the fences right here, these are heavier forms, so you can just kind of go at the base a little bit heavier. I know you're saying like, wait a minute, what do you mean like we're doing red here? Well, it's kind of the color scheme in here. So we're going for more of like a, kind of an antique-y looking, it's not a sepia print or something like that, but it's kind of going to be more in the spirit of something like that. And I'll bring in some of their tones into here, but we'll start off with kind of the base, I don't know, whatever color scheme from this pre-printed paper right here. All right. Isn't it nice having pre-printed papers though? I mean, it'd be nice to be able to create certain things from scratch, you know, paint these florals in here or draw them and paint them in, ink them in or whatever. But usually, us stampers aren't really doing that from scratch. Otherwise, we'd be painters instead of, like stampers, paper crafters. All right, so anyways, I have certain areas getting established a little bit in here. You're in awe of the stamp collection. Yeah, yeah, it's been a lot of years of kind of developing these stamp images and kind of just always kind of working towards if I deem I need something or a certain type of terrain, it's like switching up to the brown right here. Yeah, just always adding to the collection. I think right now, I think I've designed most of the different terrains. There's always kind of different images within terrains or different types of versions or something like that. And with rubber stamps, it's you want to get the scale down, right? The size of your imagery. So it's like you come up with the different sizes of images. But I think in terms of terrain, I think I have most of the different terrains kind of established. Now it's just like little kind of detail-y types of things to fill in with all of the different whatever ecosystems and things like that. When you start doing this toning right here and coloring, this is what I always tell people coming over from doing a lot of outline styles of designs, but we have this big open field in here, so we want to get the thing that makes it look a little bit more varied and interesting is developing light. So instead of treating this whole area as like one color to fill in on this grassy area, you do your shading in here, but shade kind of the darker areas in there and try to oscillate your application of colors. So in other words, you're just coloring less in many ways. Now, it doesn't have to get complex, like, okay, it has to be like dark there and light there and dark here and light here or something like that. Just as long as there's kind of like a general range, you can even have it like light like that and darker on the perimeter. And that way it looks like the spotlight is kind of hitting certain areas. And if you look across like a terrain or a mountain or whatever, meadow, especially, there's like little slight changes in terrain, whatever elevation. It could be minor too, but you'll get areas of kind of, different lighting within it, and especially if there's clouds too. But that's what this starts doing. So what you do is you color, but you're also doing lighting at the same time by utilizing the lightness of whatever your foundation, or just not coloring everything in uniformly like that. So right in here, kind of establishing a little bit more underneath my fence like this. And see, in the darker you put your shadows, the lighter the light areas are going to seem by contrast. So put the brakes on. Okay, so here's this covered bridge right here. Here's like an example right here. I do have shading already kind of in the design, so when you stamp it out, it'll be a little bit more varied, like the side of this is darker than the top, or the interior of the covered bridge is shaded. But see, it's shaded up here and lighter down here. So there's a little bit of variation inherently. But then when you come in, you can, really kind of enhance that with some additional coloring. It doesn't have to be colored pencils. It could be your, whatever, Copic markers or anything like that. But see this right here? I'm just adding some extra tone on here. And here's this little bit of shadow up here from the tree maybe, but you can do something like this. You can have a little bit darker up here and lighter in the back, or darker in the back, lighter in the front, you know, whatever you want to do, but you just kind of vary it. Here's this wall right here. I'm making it a little bit darker right here. Kind of makes that area in the front stand out a little bit more. And then as it transitions back here, it gets a little lighter. Or you can go dark, light, dark again. You know, there's all kinds of different things you can do. But if you just kind of vary your application of tone, it just gets, from a value standpoint, you can come up with a really nice, rich surface just based on the values. And then there's things like color and intensity and all that type of stuff. But if you get the value portion down really well, it can really, you know, that's like, I don't know, a big percentage of the richness of your whatever scene end result. Doesn't have to be just in scenic stamping either. It's in anything. You're playing contrasts against one another. Okay. Anyways, so you can see this lighting in here a little bit more. You know, we got tone up here, and see up in these trees, there's lighter areas kind of within there. So I might be just coloring like the base of this little clump of leaves right here, and then you leave the lighter one up top like that. So you just don't color in the whole thing, and then you get this illuminated tree like this. It's a little bit lighter, darker, darker, like that. All right, and then I like this, having these illuminated roadways or something like that going into the background. All right, here's this color right here. What is this? This is called purple. It looks, I don't know, it looks kind of reddish to me. Maybe the more purpley ones, I don't know. Or maybe I'm thinking about lavender or something like this. This is purple right here. But again, I want to bring in some of these tones over here. Yeah, exactly, Joy. It doesn't look as flat. Now, you know, unless we want to kind of emphasize, you know, flatness and silhouettes, there's, you know, a certain type of aesthetic with that as well. But yeah, as far as like rounded forms, yeah, exactly. So lighting is hitting it differently. It's like my hand right here is like, you know, I think it's roughly the same tones except for those veins there. But you can just see how many different values of light, you know, and then, you know, your nail is, you know, going to be more reflective. So, you know, you bring in all those different, you know, values into a certain form like that. Like this leaf right here. You can see this leaf, how it's dark, lighter, darker like that. And then here's this whole side of it this is light to dark. But then even when the darkness, it goes dark, light, dark, you know, the way they painted that. So, yeah. Or these ones right here, we can tell these leaves are kind of curled, or petals, right? Because of that shading right here. So here, they go light to dark, but then to contrast it, they go dark in the base area of this leaf to light up here. So see, it's, you know, it's kind of oscillating that light. It goes dark, light, like that. So there's little tricks like that. So you can just kind of play around. This teacher of mine, a life drawing teacher that I didn't get really too much else from the class, but she mentioned checkerboarding your surface, you know, so oscillating light and dark. All right, so just kind of enhancing a little bit more of these tones in here. It's when you get into the darker tones, just kind of a lot of times when I used to teach classes, we'd talk about kind of the retention of some light in there, and it's usually everyone got it just fine with the first like couple colors, But then sometimes, what you do is you're kind of there thinking about it. We weren't doing colored pencils, we were doing applications of dye-based inks. But where they would lose their lighting a lot of times, it's in the darker tones because they'd be working faster, and their darker colors just spread more with wet media. So sometimes they would lose their lighting because they colored too much of the area in with the darker forms, where they were kind of a little more cautious with the lighter tones. Which is no problem too, because if you lose your light, like, okay, oh my god, I colored in all of this area here with this tone right here. Well, you just go darker and then make your shadows even darker, and it'll make that thing that you thought was colored too dark lighter by contrast. So again, you just play contrast against one another. If it's a color that you can't remove, like, oh my god, I made that too dark, I can't like erase these colored pencils, I don't think. So if I made some area that was just, I made that area too dark, then, like you said, you just put something darker next to it, or, make a shadow area darker, and it'll, again, you're just playing contrasts against one another. So it's not like a point of no return. Or you put like a, pigment ink, and I put like fog or something like that into it. With white pigment ink, All right, so we're going with sepia right here. So there's some sepia tones, I think. I don't know, they're not really sepia, but they're sepia-ish in here, but layered upon these other images in here. And, it's kind of creating something similar-ish, I guess, to the existing paper color scheme. Not exactly dynamic, live stream viewing here, but I do it pretty slow, and I don't know, whatever, very incremental additions. Like, I'm just doing the sepia, goes pretty dark, but I'm just kind of using like a really light version of it, so that everything kind of just develops as far as like a lighting scheme, shading scheme, really kind of slowly. If you work kind of slower like that, or methodical, like maybe that's the term, unless you're kind of not paying attention, which is entirely possible, because this happens to me too. We start doing this type of applications like this, and I'm focusing on these little 1-inch areas, so it's important to kind of take it in as a whole and see what, how what you're doing is affecting the overall kind of look of the piece. So kind of, I don't know, whatever, zoom out, once in a while you're doing these types of applications. All right, let's see. This gets a little busy right here, so what you do is you cut down the contrast between those leaves right here and the background, but you can just do it like in a small area like this. You don't have to do it up the whole thing, but see this bottom little area down here, like that. And so it's not quite so busy like in this area. And then I'll do the same thing with black. I'll make it a little bit darker, or like over here, we have this little tone in here, like a shaded tone. And you can put this like back in here too, just with like a 5% version of this sepia, like that. And that kind of closes off that area a little bit more. We're always working with these 90-degree sharp angles when we're working on most of the scenes that we're doing, unless we're doing like ovals or something like that, rounds and ovals. So you can kind of do that little bit of a vignette type of thing and make those little corners a little bit more round. And I think it looks a little bit more, I don't know, it softens the corners. No, I'm not going to do that here and here because it's, you know, we have this stationary paper and these images within there. So I'll just do it over here. Okay, this is a little bit of green. So let's vary this a little bit more. This is a really dark green right here, but we'll add this new hue. There's a little bit of this gray greenish tinge in the leaves in here, but here's where we kind of start to kind of expand. I don't know, what is it? The hue, the color range. You know, we have lighting, a lighting whatever scheme in here by the use of value. You know, light and dark. Now we can expand on the color range a little bit. You know, it was getting a little bit too monotonous in here. It doesn't have to be a lot either, but see, even just that little bit of greenish tinge in here, I think it looks, I don't know, more rich, I guess, like that. And there's a little bit of differentiation between this grassy area and this road right here too. Does anyone live in a state with covered bridges? I think there's one. I don't know how many there is in California. I don't think there's too many. Isn't there some in like a couple in like Gold Country or something like that? I don't know. Was Sutter's Bridge a covered bridge? I can't remember. With like social media, I was watching this video of this news story. I don't know where it was, Connecticut or something like that, but there was just like this really scenic area, but with like social media and people going to these areas and posting it online. It's like these little small backcountry roads and these really super picturesque little areas, like overrun with tourists, you know, going out there and checking out things like the fall foliage, you know, and I thought there was some covered bridge, I mean, you know, in that story that I was watching. Anyways, yeah, a little bit of those greenish tones in there now, like that. That's a real dark one. Let's try the little bit of a brighter one. This, yeah, that looks good, I think. Kind of makes it alive, brings a. I'm kind of, what you do is you stay in kind of those darker areas like that a little bit, and then you kind of creep it into that open area, the lighter area a little bit, like that. Okay. So again, it kind of creates these kind of nice, oh, I don't know, whatever, gracefully transitioned color changes in here rather than going with anything too extreme. So I just see if it works, in other words, by going really light and dull. And then if I like it, I might go stronger and more intense like that. Of course, I'm doing it over colors in here, though. Not a white piece of paper, but you can kind of get the idea of just by going really lightly and seeing it kind of glows a little bit more, I think, like that. So it just depends on what you're going after. If you want to have it look a little bit more aged, then don't go, you know, too hard with a lot of intensity and keep it kind of like a more weathered type of look. for my eyes, I like a little bit more of a intensity. But here, again, it's kind of going a little bit brighter, it's a little bit duller, a little bit brighter, dull. So you're kind of oscillating intensity now. Before it's, when you're talking about lighting, you're oscillating value, dark and light, like that. Okay. So it's kind of checkerboarding. Not so much, I don't know, a little bit here, your intensity. Okay, so we have that. Yeah, that really kind of woke it up a little bit, I think. Okay, now this is supposed to be fall, so... But again, if I'm kind of going with these right here, I mean, these aren't fall tones right here, but I don't know, what, like I said, it's in the pack. So there's not really orange in here, but I think having some brighter colors on these leaves might be good. We'll see if orange kind of, I can get it to harmonize with, you know, that. It'd probably be better if these were like in a little bit of a pinkish tone or something like that, you know, because that's going to relate to that wine a little bit more. I'll just use a little bit of this orange in here. Look at that. It's real subtle. So, it, you know, for your subconscious. Hello, Vintage Scrap Girl. How goes it? Have you been getting bombarded with rain? California's in this... oh my god, what do they call those? Not storms. What do they call that? I forgot what... Okay, I forgot what they call it. Atmospheric river. Thankfully, not for people that are getting flooded out in some areas, but, you know, just in terms of like all the reservoirs kind of filling up a little bit. A little bit of a pinkish tinge in here. I don't know if you can see it right in here, but again, it kind of relates to some of the tones like in these flowers right here. I don't know. For me, you know, again, working some of these other colors in here related to the paper, it's a really good exercise for me. Just to break out of some of the color, maybe not color schemes, but color combinations that I'm used to using. And that's, you know, sometimes when you do that, or I don't know if I'm forced to, but, you know, it's choice, but, you know, you can bring that into your other types of pieces in the, you know, going forward. It's like, oh yeah, I remember, you know, using that, whatever, that purple with that green or something like that was kind of interesting, so. Where I probably wouldn't have thought I'd done it had I just started off with a white piece of paper, you know, and gone with what I've always been using, so. I don't know. Sounds like a New Year's Eve stamping resolution. Use other, you know, try other color combinations. All right, so here's a little bit of this violet again, kind of related to some of those tones around in there. It's a little bit glary, I don't know. That's really reflective. It's a little bit more like that. Okay, the original piece. I have a lot of lighting in my studio, so it's a little bit more darker and intense. You know, it's not super intense, but those colors kind of stand out a little bit more. This is a little bit glary and reflective. Okay, so let's see here. I'm trying to think of what other types of things I want to do in here. I do have these alcohol markers here, and I tried this on my mauve scene last time, just a little bit, but sometimes when you're doing just colored pencils, it can all have kind of the similar texture. So sometimes you can go like in these darker areas, like underneath these eaves here, you can make certain applications a little bit richer, but this is like a really pale version of some of the tones that I've already applied. So you can just kind of hit it like in the shadow areas like this a little bit more to make them just a little bit more, I don't know, full, I guess, and rich, as opposed to whatever, texturally similar. So in other words, you're making, yeah, I guess you're making the shadow areas just a little bit richer with an extra layer of tone. Now it's a little bit extreme right there. That doesn't blend in because again, this is like solid form as opposed to kind of more of a textural application with the colored pencils. But I'm going to be going into it with my paint pens though still, so we're going to add in some texture with that too. So you can do that, or like in this area right in here, if you want to add a little bit more shadow to it, go with something like a really super pale. This is like a really, really pale green here, but you can come in here like this. Actually, that looks pretty good. It just, I don't know, it kind of bumps up the intensity by like a couple percent maybe, but it's still really kind of subtle. It's really subtle. But see, right in here, I can tell sitting here right in front of me. I don't know if it's going to look the same when it dries. But yeah, it just kind of makes this certain areas, like my shadow areas, a little bit richer. Okay. Before I get to my paint pens, let me hit some areas with a little bit more shadow with black. So we stamped out our imagery in black. And I like to anchor a lot of those same forms with a similar color. I'm not going with like really strong black. Again, it's going to be more of like a gray tone using black. But this black should, I don't know, it kind of brings everything together a little bit more. If you want to make this bridge stand out a little bit more and bring it out from the background, then you kind of just tone in a little bit behind it and make the background just a little slightly darker. All right, let's see. Yeah, we down here, we're getting rain, but I mean, there's reports down in like Mission Valley and stuff like that that always get flooded out anytime there's a decent amount of rain. But yeah, I think most of the rains, it's all north of us. Like as far the farthest south is like LA, that's getting a decent amount of rainfall. Here's a little bit of blue. I'm just putting it like in here. I don't even, that doesn't look good. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so I have a different like a range of acrylic paint pen values here. It's not a huge amount going from white to like this tan here, but let's add some of this in here. I usually make my tones in the background in this foliage here a little bit brighter, but I'm not sure about that. It will stand out if it's not kind of within the same color range. So maybe I'll do it here, I'll do it in this right here. This kind of violet tone. I'll bring some of these colors into those trees up there. It might not exist in terms of a tree that looks this way in the fall, but again, this is rubber stamping. It's not whatever, tree science. Okay, I'll try to make this fast here. I'll just do a few of these. I know you can't see this on probably your screens here, but I'll layer this a little bit. You might be able to see pink a little bit more when I add that in, but I want to give a little bit of a base layer of this tone. If I have a larger version of it. Yeah, here's a larger version. 0.7 millimeter, 3 millimeter. These paint pens are really fantastic. They're so inexpensive, and most of the packs work pretty good. Some of the higher quality ones that are more opaque are brighter and look more full. But if you don't use them all the time, sometimes they clog, because at least on the 3 millimeter ones, because the paint dries on the edge, because they're not as watery. So this pack right here I've been using for years with no problem, but it's a little bit watery. Okay, so that right in there, those dots really stand out, but when that dries, because the pens are a little bit more watery, they will kind of blend in with that background a little bit more. Let's go to the next tone here. And see, I'm adding this onto the top surfaces, top edge of my leaf clusters. So it's darker right down here, but on the top, so instead it's that opposite of shading, kind of you're transitioning, you put a little bit more on the top edge, and then you transition that. Just like the same thing with the opposite with the shading, you make it a little bit darker, and then you transition it into light. This is light, and I'm transitioning it a little bit into darkness. You say, well, what are you talking about? Like, how do you transition it? In stippling, you just kind of, you cluster your little dots a little bit heavier where you want a thicker application, and then you spread those dots out farther apart, and that will make it look, when it's light on dark, it'll make it look darker. Okay, so heavy or clustered, and then where it's darker down here, you just kind of spread those little dots out a little bit. It'll look kind of weird too if you have like that texture in only one area. So you have to kind of make it a common textural statement across that, your whole piece, and then it makes sense from a lighting standpoint. Okay. All right. So yeah, that kind of brings those trees to life a little bit. And what I like to do is I like to go into my trees, and then there's these little trunks in here. You can't really see them because it's kind of, in that darkness right here, but I like to put a little bit of a light onto them like this. I need to shake this up more. As soon as I do that little thing, I could see it, but as soon as it dries, it kind of disappears. So you can shake this up and make your paint a little bit more opaque. But again, this is kind of more of a watery pen too. So again, it doesn't clog on me, but it's not as opaque as I would like it to be. I don't know. We can't have it all. Super long-lasting pens that aren't clogging but still nice and opaque. Okay, so I'll do the same thing on these fence posts right here again. So here you can see it like this. There's trees in the background like there. Oh, the purple paint pen. Yeah, yeah. So the purple paint pen too, like we have these little tones right here, and that's kind of related to the purple-ish colors right down in here. It's subtle, but there's a little bit of lavender. But you can take that paint pen and then you can add highlights onto these forms as well. I usually do that after I kind of get doing this a little bit, just to kind of get in the swing of it. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, trying to put some of this on this edge of these fences, right? I think I'm gonna have to go to the white for it to stand out. But I'll start with this. This is kind of giving me, I'm getting my kind of like my movement down like this, my gesture, and then I'm getting like my practice in on these forms right here. All right, so see, getting those little edges like that, the fence posts might seem a little bit more 3D. This is like something that you don't have to do, but I think it makes things potentially a little bit more like that three-dimensional looking, when you have that little bit of highlighting on it. Okay, so we have all these grasses in here. This gets, this is a little bit muddy in here, right? From a textural standpoint, so you can put like these little cluster. That's okay here. That's really kind of watery. Let me try this one. If it's not opaque enough, I'll go to the white. I'll move it to the white. Or we can move to this purple too. Here, let me try that purple again. Let me see. This one might be running out of paint here. Let me try it. Yeah, you can see a little bit. See that little form in there? So these can be little lavender toned floral elements in here, but it's kind of just, some additional texture in here too, just to kind of bring a little bit of life into these areas that are otherwise like muddled and, without a lot of form structure. Okay, so I have light and shade in here, but again, it's just this little area in here and everything's kind of soft and muddled. So this is my way to add in something kind of crisp back into there from kind of a textural and I guess lighting standpoint. Like that. And okay, so the white is going to really stand out on here because there's nothing white in here. I started off and the lightest tone on this paper is that, okay. But I'll try to bring in some white pigment ink into this later on, which will hopefully blend in the contrast that this creates. I'm not going to put this I'm not going to use a crazy amount of it, but I don't know, we'll see. I found that the white looked okay when I've been using it on these other papers. In the end result. But again, it does stand out potentially quite a bit because it's going to be the lightest thing in the whole scene because there's not anything even on the foundation that's that light value, white. So, and again, that stands out a little bit more than what it'll look like when it dries, which in this case is a good thing, having that little bit of a kind of more of a watery, translucent quality to the paper, to the pen. Okay, now see, there's all these rocks in here, okay, that are kind of hard to see, But I like to put like a little bit of like a highlight on top. So if you do, I wouldn't do it on all of them, but if you do that on some, and it might just be a little dot or something, these just stand out a little bit more like that. And then you can bring that into some of these rocks on the road up here, like that, and it just kind of adds a little bit more of this nice textural kind of shimmery quality to the surface. Okay, let me try this again on these fences here. See, I can get a kind of a nice graceful line like that by having practiced for a couple minutes on, you know, with those darker tones on there. It's like doing like a little check mark or something. And the fence is already illuminated, okay, inherently in the design. I have these like posts, you know, a little bit. See these rungs in here are a little bit lighter on the top and darker on the bottom. So I'm just reiterating that, but they'll already have some of that inherent in the design. So again, you don't have to do that because they're already lit. But that just kind of adds in that little extra bit into it. Okay, and I'll add in some of these little, whatever they are, little flowers into the field. I think it just started raining again here. I hear it outside. All right, so there we go like that. So it's everything's kind of vibrating a little bit with, or shimmering a little bit with that application of white especially. But see, what I was talking about is, well, let me see. Let me try it with the white here. So on some of these lighter forms in here. Hello, Linda. How are you? I'll add in a few little highlights. I'm not going to do too much, I don't think. You can just kind of go in and add some of these little highlights, little streaks. Like that. I don't know if you see them in here, but then see it kind of makes them relate to the other imagery in here a little bit more. So I'm getting a pretty graceful and specific application of that, but I have to do that a few times, you know, throughout, you know, with these lighter tones as I'm doing that type of mark. I'm like by no means like a, you know, like a skilled, like a calligrapher would be, you know, in terms of getting real nice, beautiful gestural marks. So I practice, you know, on little things using, you know, colors that are barely visible so that when I get to the, you know, the pen or whatever the tool that's going to be the most contrast, then I've kind of done that for a couple minutes in there already. Okay, here's a little bit of this violet right here. And, you know, we can add that on some of these forms, the pre-printed forms. That. I don't even know if I'm adding it kind of on the right object. So I get a nice gestural mark by moving my paper around too. Not doing this and coming over here and doing, you know, kind of an awkward movement. So I just turn this in a way that my hand always has to just do this type of thing. So I turn the page, you know, in that direction. So like this little vein right here, if I want to get into there, I can, you know, come in like that, you know. So I'm just turning this that direction. See, I don't want to get that vein. But anyways, you see all these little forms in here, this little bit of lighting in here. It kind of relates to kind of what's going on in here a little bit more now. Or like on these little forms in here, you know, if you want to add a little bit of texture and lighting into, these leaves down here, you can do that. Here, we'll do it up top here again. So I don't know, it makes it, seem a little bit more dimensional, and it gives it a little bit more shimmer. All right, let's try the white pigment ink in here. And a little bit of some different tones, Linda. Oh, hello, Bonnie. Glad you like it, Clip Soul. Final touches right here with our, where'd my pigment ink go? And we'll just add, okay, so here's the thing with this. If you've ever kind of not done this before, but white pigment ink, a lot of people's pigment ink pads are really super juicy because we don't use them very often. This one, for me, is kind of a medium dry one, okay? So as you're tapping use 100% cotton ball, or whatever applicator you're using, sponge or anything like that. I smash it down in there. But you want a really dry application. So if we were painting, we'd call this dry brushing. But if yours is really super juicy, just dab it off a lot before you take it into your piece, okay? All right, so I'm just going to add some atmosphere into it. I like doing it at the base of kind of my subject matters a lot of times. So I'll start in some kind of lighter area like that. And I'll kind of creep it in here. So you can see I've already tapped it like 15 times. And it's like I can't even see it, I need more ink on my, cotton ball here. But again, it's just, point of emphasis to take it nice and methodical. I'm going to take this and make it a little bit more narrow here too. So I'm not doing the whole deer like that, but I don't know, hopefully you can see it. I need to re-ink my pad. It's like super dry. Okay, here it comes. Let's see, it's like in a little bit of this fog right here, and see this fence right here. I like doing this at the far end of fences, I found. Like this, so we're adding it right down here, and then you add it at the base of the fence too. So it looks like this low-lying fog in here, like that. And if you ever get a blob in there, it's like that's a little bit too light too, so you just kind of wipe some of it off like that. Now, this is a matte piece of paper, so it's not going to come off completely. But you can, pigment ink doesn't dry so fast that you can't kind of manipulate it. The biggest thing is don't go like this. Wait, I can't see anything at all. Squish, and then it's like a really big blob. Just kind of take it really slow. It's the mindset is like you're applying almost like a powder to your piece, okay? And you're just building it up nice and gradually. And then you get kind of that look that you're going for. And it could be like this little glowing, little translucent layer of mist, illuminated mist in there, like what the light is hitting it, right? But see, I've probably tapped this in here like 40 times, okay? If not more. And it doesn't take long to do. But then you see I'm kind of spreading this out like this a little bit from a higher concentration of it, so it goes from light to darker and light to darker right here, and see there's nothing right in here. Let's get a little bit of that in the background. Here's this lighter area right in here. So I guess it gives it kind of that softer, whatever, glowing light in our pieces. And again, this isn't just for like landscape stamping. I think this would look cool if you do, like a lot of people stamp word stamps, right? And if you do like a corner of like if it's bold word or something like that, you can do this along the bottom portion where it looks like it's being illuminated from the bottom up or something like that. Or you have, I don't know, whatever. You can have something in the corner and it's like, word stamp is being illuminated from upper left, so you can kind of put a little bit of tone over the top of it. But, you know, that's a, you know, if it's on like a white piece of paper. Okay, see this in the background right here? Not a very interesting area right in here, but then if you add a little bit of this texture, and again, it's lighting because you're doing it light into a darker area. It's white into a darker area, but it's a transparent, you know, translucent white. It just adds a little bit more visual interest back here, and then you can also make this softer, and then this bridge stands out a little bit more from a textural standpoint. Okay, so I'll add this like at the base of the bridge too. I like it in my, like along my bank of like water, like a little stream or something like that. So I'll try to concentrate it in a little area like that, and then I'll spread it out a little bit. Okay, so this fence right here, why don't we push this fence back a little bit visually from this foreground fence. Okay, now I already have, you know, some little bit of this mist and fog on both of those areas, but let's put a little bit more on this one so that this one's a little bit lighter than this front one. Okay, so yeah, a little bit too much. Here, just wipe it off a little bit. So it's a repetition of form from here to here, but this one's a little bit lighter, so visually it moves back in the distance, or we push it back in the distance a little bit. Speaking of that, you know, that's why I always use this pigment ink for me. A lot of times, I think it enhances, but it also repairs some applications that I've done in some scenes. That's why when I'm doing some scenes, if I get a little bit heavy-handed or something like that, or I put a little bit too much of something in a certain area, a lot of times it's going nuts with the paint pens, where I go crazy with them, and then, you know, everything is crawling with dots or something like that. You know, I might de-emphasize them a little bit with like a veil of mist over the front of it. You know, and it makes it look, we've turned kind of something that didn't look, that looked, too crazy or something like that, or overdone, and it, you de-emphasize it, and it, I think it makes it look, a lot better, or just, it could be from just the fact that, you can't see it as much anymore, because I put a, pigment ink over the front of it, so. Anyway, all right, so that is that. Okay, so this is really glary in here. I'm using a Brilliance pigment ink, which is, it has a little bit of shimmer to it. Okay, so it's not that bright like that. It's catching the light like that. So this is what really kind of more of what it looks like in person right here with all that glare on it like that. So, we have some here, here, none here. So it's like soft, a little more crisp, soft, crisp, soft. So you're oscillating, the usage of this in here. We got these little highlights on here again, which kind of mimics what's going on in the background. So you can play around with this. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it before, but I guess if there's some certain types of colors that you want to add into your scene, but it doesn't really go really well with all of the colors that are on these, in this case, these pre-printed papers like this. I hadn't really thought about it before, but I guess you're not going to change the color scheme of it, but I was saying orangish tones didn't really work in the background. Now, I don't know if I would add orange to these, but I guess you can add some color. You can color these. Yeah, I can't color this wine tone one anymore because it's already dark, but in these lighter forms in here, if I wanted to emphasize pink in the background or something like that, I can add a more pinkish tone right into these little pre-printed floral elements like that. You know, I think that would be fine to do. So you're just kind of customizing them a little bit more for whatever purposes you want to create with your own color scheme in the background, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, looks pretty good. And that goes on to that. These colored pencils work on there pretty decently. Anyway, I don't know. I don't think I've done too many 8x8s before here, these square pieces. And it's kind of fun working in a square here like this. I was mentioning I did the square because I usually do like a half page or a quarter page pieces, so 8.5 by 5.5. But I like the way this curled off in the distance, and I wanted to get that extra little flower in there, so trying 8x8 here with this piece. So anyway, you can see all those different applications of the Brilliance ink and different textures on this otherwise very cheap stationery paper right here. But yeah, pretty fun stuff. Working in these, for me, a little bit of a tweak on, a color scheme that I haven't really done too much before. Trying to go for these little bit more of a magenta wine tone colors in the background. But I think this green really helped out in here too. So just introducing another version. That's a little bit green there, but not too much. Like gray. It's like a cool gray green maybe. But just bringing kind of a lighter tone version of it into the mix, I think, helped it out a lot. Just in terms of variety, I guess it's supposed to be aged, so maybe it's not so aged anymore with that, but maybe a little bit more interesting for me with a little bit more green. Anyway, analyzing here, I'm trying to think of this color scheme right here, what I can take in the future. I don't know, maybe I will have to use more of those, like types of colors like this. You can see I haven't used this like a lot. It's like 30 years old, and it's like you can see the pens that the pencils that I use more often, but like this family, these are all out of the same set. You can tell I don't use like that range of tones very often right here. So yeah, I should though, just kind of I don't know, whatever, explore some different color schemes in there. So these pre-printed papers are a pretty good way to go in terms of, I don't know, whatever, experimenting around a little bit. All right. Anyways, let's see. Happy New Year to you, Circus of Art. Circus of Art, cool. From the Canary Island. Oh. Morning from the mountains here. Very cool, very cool. Thanks for checking out the stream here. If you just joined in, anyone, I'm stamping scenic stamping on these. Not this one. This one's a little bit of a different pattern here, but there's these just we've been practicing around with these just cheap pre-printed stationery papers. This one is a pack that has these ruled lined stationery papers, but then the back of them have a completely different pattern. So it's just been kind of fun. We're usually in scenic stamping, just stamping in general, we're usually starting off with kind of just a blank piece of paper, but it's been fun kind of incorporating in these more painted types of forms with, in this case, I use this set right here plus a couple fences, but I don't know, it just gives it a little bit more of an organic type of feel, having these kind of brushed forms, painted forms in here. I don't think these are digitally created. It could have been, but I don't know, it's probably someone that's a really good painter doing these things in the background, but just a little bit more of these organic shapes in here like this, and plus it pushes perspective as well in there by having these really large leaves. I can't really do like There are stamps in there that are large like that, but having this large, light on dark types of things like that, stamping usually going darker over darker over darker, and not having a dark background and stamping like a light form back into it. There just isn't the media to do that, like to get a really light form like that. So it's just kind of nice, being able to incorporate it in with these pre-printed background papers like that. So. And it's just a matter of, playing around with them and getting them to harmonize with the backgrounds. So really fun kind of experimenting with that. Here's just pre-printed paper right here. This is a whole piece of paper like that. I just fold it in half like that to make that horizon card like this. But here's those forms down here and all those background tones and just stamping right over the top of it like that. So it's giving us some really some interesting and different looks than what I think we're traditionally used to seeing in stamping. So because you get the painted forms in there as well. Anyways, I'm rambling here, but I don't know. I love playing around with these so much, and I'm seeing different types of looks. After whatever 30 plus years of rubber stamping. Oh my God. 2026. How can that be? All right. The scene. We'll have to think of what's a good title for this piece. It's not really. This came out of the autumn pack here, but these aren't really autumn, forms in there. They're more like aged. I don't know, whatever, springtime, with the flowers in here. So, I don't know. We'll think of something. All right, folks. Hope to see you in the next future live streams. Good to see everyone, both new and existing viewers of the channel. We'll try to come up with some nice and interesting projects here in 2026 and still keep experimenting and hopefully find some, I don't know, whatever good dynamic new combinations of media surface or whatever to experiment with and to incorporate into our pieces. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun using these papers, Clipsal Soul. So yeah. I want to experiment more with all kinds of other things. So a lot of papers to play around with. And again, like I said, different color schemes especially. So we'll try to come up with some dynamic usages of all of these different types of papers that are out there and I don't know, should be available anywhere. Maybe not that specific pack, but I think these stationery papers are anywhere around the world. So maybe Circus of Art, in Canary Island can, find, probably some form of these different stationery papers. If they like the look of it, So we'll see what we can come up with going forward with this in mind. All right, folks, have a great rest of evening or whatever time of a day it is for you. Morning in the Canary Island there. So have a good rest of day. See ya, folks.